You think the moment you broke them is the one they'll never recover from. But what if that's the moment that saves them, the time you snapped, the promise you forgot, the voice you used, the one that didn't sound like you, the look on their face afterward that still visits you in quiet moments? You replay it, and the myth tells you this is the damage, this is the scar. But what if it's the doorway? What if the moment you thought would ruin your child is the one that teaches them they can fall and still be loved? We don't talk about that version of parenting. We talk about plans, routines, the systems of doing it right. We talk about being emotionally available, regulated, mindful, present. But not about the moment you lock yourself in the bathroom just to breathe. Not about sobbing behind a closed door while your child pounds on the other side. Not about staring into the void of a messy kitchen at 8:43 p.m., so emptied that even your own name sounds foreign. That version, the raw one, the one that aches, we bury it because we've been told it disqualifies us. We've been told that parenting means seamless presence, that good love doesn't falter, that your child's emotional future rests on how flawlessly you manage your own emotions. The myth is silent but loud. It says, if you raise your voice, you've broken trust. If you lose control, you've modeled danger. If you cry, you're unstable. If you admit you're tired, they'll feel unsafe, so you perform, you hold your breath. You try to become the thing they need, even if it empties you out completely. And still, deep down, it doesn't feel like enough. But here's what the myth never tells you. Your child doesn't need you to be invincible. They need to know what it looks like to come back after things fall apart. Because one day, they'll have their own moment when they say something they regret, when they feel like they've already failed, and they'll remember what you did next. Not how perfectly you showed up, but how honestly you returned. That's not damage. That's memory. That's the blueprint of real love. Carl Jung said, I'd rather be whole than good. This isn't about being right. It's about being real. By the end of this video, you'll see why the moments you thought would mark your child may actually shape them. Why the cracks in your parenting, when met with humility and return, can become the very gold they hold on to when they question their own worth. Because being perfect was never the assignment, but being present through the breaking, through the mending, that's where the light comes through. That's where the love becomes unforgettable. In 1953, a pediatrician named Donald Winnicott stood before a group of mothers who had come to learn how not to mess up their children. They wanted clarity, they wanted control, they wanted confidence. Instead, he gave them this: you don't need to be perfect, he said. You just need to be good enough. 5 words that quietly rewrote the story of what children actually need. And still, most of us never got the memo. Because perfection sells, performance sells. Parenting books, reels, courses, they promise better outcomes as long as you never drop the thread. But Winnicott wasn't interested in marketing. He was interested in reality. And what he saw across thousands of real parents and real babies was this. The children whose parents tried to meet every need instantly, flawlessly, often grew up brittle, unprepared for frustration, expecting the world to mirror their every discomfort. But the children whose parents got it wrong sometimes, not harmfully but honestly, the ones who waited a little longer, who didn't always read the signals right, the ones who occasionally stumbled and came back, those children learned something priceless. Resilience, because what Winnicott discovered was that children don't need continuous perfection. They need tolerable failure, moments of frustration that are real but safe. Moments that say, I didn't get this one right, but I'm still here. He called it the necessary failure, not as punishment, not as neglect, but as preparation. So when the snack is forgotten, when the answer comes too sharp, when the story is skipped, when the apology is whispered in the dark hours later, your child learns not that the world is scary, but that connection can stretch without snapping, that repair exists. That rupture doesn't mean rejection, but we live in an age where even that message feels radical, because the myth has morphed. Now it's not just about love, it's about optimization. If your child is crying, you missed something. If they're bored, you failed to enrich. If they're dysregulated, you failed to attune. If they are struggling, you must have skipped a step in the script. And so we hustle, we overcorrect, we overperform, we helicopter, we curate, We erase our needs and call it love, but all we're doing is building a world where our child believes discomfort is dangerous. A father told me I thought I was giving my son everything. But now at 16, he shuts down when anything doesn't go his way. He avoids conflict. He panics if he can't control it. And I realize I taught him that. I taught him that real life should never feel hard. That's what overprotection does. It doesn't empower, it disables, because your child doesn't just need to feel safe. They need to feel frustration and survive it. They need to know that the world won't always bend, and that love still can exist inside that truth. And here's where the breakthrough happens. When your child watches you get it wrong, and then watches you come back, soft, honest, open, they learn that being loved doesn't mean being perfect. It means being seen, held, stayed with. They learn that relationships don't shatter when tension enters the room. They learn that connection doesn't require performance. So the next time that voice rises inside you, the one that says you should have handled that better, pause and ask instead, did I return? Did I reconnect? Did I show them that love isn't about doing it all perfectly, but being here even when I don't? Because if the answer is yes, you didn't fail, you just parented. The Winnicott way, the real way, the way that gives your child not the fantasy, but the tools to live and love in the world as it really is. Not just good enough, powerfully human and unforgettable. There's a parable, quiet, almost forgotten. A man carried 2 clay pots to and from the river each day. One was perfect, the other had a long crack down its side. Each trip, the cracked pot spilled water along the path. One day it spoke. "I'm sorry, I'm broken. I failed you." But the man smiled and said, "Look at the path behind you. See the flowers? I planted seeds on your side. And every day you've been watering them." This is what imperfection does. It nurtures life in the places we never intended to grow, but only if we stop shaming the leek long enough to see what's blooming around it. In parenting, we rarely stop. We replay the moment we snapped, the sarcastic jab, the eye roll, the birthday we tried too hard and still somehow got wrong. We see the leak, the deviation, the moment the mask cracked and the child saw us not as calm, but as human. And we tell ourselves this is the moment they'll carry as damage. But what if this is the moment they'll carry as clarity? Carl Jung wrote, "There is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection." Then he added, "I'd rather be whole than good." Those words matter here, because this isn't just about spiritual growth. This is about the moment your child finds out that love doesn't vanish when things fall apart. And they don't find that out on your best day. They find it when you raise your voice and then return to the room, when you miss the cue but still offer your lap, when you're late again and still show up. One mother told me my son showed me his drawing beaming, and I said, "Just a minute." I turned away to finish an email. When I looked back, the paper was gone. He'd thrown it out. That night I cried. The next morning I told him, "I wish I had looked. Will you draw something else for me?" And he did, and I framed it. That frame, it's for me, to remember what it means to come back. That's what real parenting looks like. Not seamlessness, but repair. In Japan, when something breaks, they don't hide it. They mend the cracks with gold. It's called kintsugi, golden repair. The flaw becomes the feature, not because it's erased, but because it's been through something and survived. That's what you're doing when you come back, when you speak the apology, when you hold them after the hard part. You're pouring gold into the crack, and your child, they're watching. They're learning that love isn't clean. It isn't polished. It isn't about getting everything right. It's about what happens after things go wrong. And one day they'll need that memory, not the flawless day, not the perfect routine, the moment you stumbled and came back anyway. Because love didn't leave, it leaked and still found a way to nourish what mattered most. There's an inheritance we pass down without even noticing, not in the way we speak, but in the things we don't. The moods we suppress, the tears we swallow, the needs we bury beneath routine and smile. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Everything we reject in ourselves, our sadness, our resentment, our fear, our shame, the parts we believe are too dangerous to show. We think hiding them makes us good. We think silence is safer than mess. We think if we just keep smiling, no one will absorb what we're trying to contain. But children feel what we don't say. They feel it in the shift in your tone when they ask the same question again, in the way your eyes glaze over when they hand you their art, in the way your hug lingers, but your mind is somewhere else. One father told me, "I never yelled. I never raised a hand, but I never said I was struggling either. Now my son's grown, and he told me he never felt like I was fully there, because I never let him see who I really was. That's the cost of pretending. We think we're protecting them from the darkness, but we're just teaching them to be afraid of their own, because when you act like love means keeping it all together, you make vulnerability look like a threat, and when they feel sadness or shame or rage, they'll assume something is wrong with them, because they never saw those parts in you. That's how the shadow gets passed down, not in genetics, but in silence. But here's the turn. You don't have to collapse to tell the truth. You don't have to over-explain. You just have to let them see that being human isn't something you're hiding from. You can say, I was short with you, that wasn't your fault, or I'm feeling heavy today, but I'm still here. That's not burdening them. That's showing them what it means to stay real while staying close. Winnicott taught us that children need us to fail in small, manageable ways so they can build resilience. Jung taught us that what we hide becomes the inheritance they carry, and between those truths lives the opportunity of a lifetime. To raise a child who doesn't just survive the world, but knows how to live in it without losing themselves. To raise a child who doesn't panic when they feel sadness, because they've seen you name it and still stay soft. To raise a child who doesn't hide when they're angry, because they've seen you hold your own without turning it into harm. To raise a child who isn't afraid of the shadow, because you never taught them to be. So here's the shift. You don't have to hand your child a polished version of you. You have to hand them one that tells the truth, that makes space, that shows them how to hold their own darkness without shame, because one day they'll face a version of it in themselves. And the question won't be, can I avoid it? It'll be, do I know how to stay inside it and still love myself? And your answer, your example, might be the thing that makes all the difference. You don't have to collapse to know you're burning out. You just have to realize you've stopped laughing. That you can't remember the last time you sat down without checking something. That joy feels like something reserved for people with fewer tabs open in their heads. You just have to stand in a room full of love and feel completely alone inside your own body. That's the weight no one talks about, because the myth doesn't allow for this kind of exhaustion. The myth says, if you're tired, try harder. If you're overwhelmed, be more organized. If you're struggling, keep it quiet. The myth says good parenting is total devotion, even if it erases you, especially if it erases you. And the cost is that slowly, quietly you disappear. Not all at once, not dramatically. You just start to become someone who exists only in service of someone else's need. You become efficient, productive, helpful, but hollow. One mother said, I haven't heard my own voice in weeks. Not the one I used to manage bedtime, the one I used to remember who I am. That's what burnout looks like. It doesn't look like falling apart. It looks like disappearing while standing up. The myth tells you to keep going, but if you keep going like this, your child gets a body without a spirit, a presence without connection. Carl Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, but in parenting, the most terrifying thing is often admitting, I can't keep doing it this way, because we're afraid that if we stop, even for a breath, everything will fall. The structure, the rhythm, the image. But here's what no one tells you. Trying to be everything will cost you the one thing your child needs most. You, not your effort, not your availability, your realness, your warmth, your laugh that isn't forced, your eyes that don't glaze over from fatigue, the version of you who is still alive inside the role. And yes, your child sees the difference. They can feel the moment you're with them, but not there. They can feel the disconnection under the smile. They can sense when your I'm fine is a script, not a truth. And no, this doesn't make you a bad parent. It makes you human inside a machine that demands superhuman endurance. But the truth is, the way back isn't through more effort. It's through permission. Permission to pause, to say, not today, to leave one dish in the sink, to disappoint someone instead of losing yourself. Because what if the bravest parenting move isn't doing more, but doing less and staying present inside it? Winnicott didn't say give them everything. He said, be good enough, not just for them, for you. Because your child doesn't need you to perform happiness. They need you to embody wholeness, even when that wholeness includes rest, limits, and truth. So here's what I want you to do. Drop something, not because it's unimportant, but because you are. That drop ball might just be the one that makes space for breath, for eye contact, for the version of you who remembers how to feel again. That's not laziness, that's love in its most sustainable form, and your child will feel the difference, not in what you do, but in who's finally home inside the doing. One day your child will be standing in their own bathroom, lights off, shirt stained, clock blinking 1:17 a.m., a baby crying in the next room, an argument replaying in their mind, and the weight of "I'm failing" wrapped around their chest like a too-tight blanket. And then they'll hear your voice, not your lecture, not your rules, your rhythm, your presence. They'll remember how you looked at them when you were tired, how you still reached for them, messy, real, human. How you owned your missteps and never once made perfection a condition for love. That memory will be their permission to exhale, to forgive themselves, to stay. Because the truth is, the legacy you leave isn't built from your best days. It's built from the way you showed up after the worst ones. It's built from the mornings after, the apologies whispered through cracked voices, the dinners made even when your chest was heavy, the moment you said, "This is hard," and didn't run from it. Winnicott gave us a path. He said, let them experience frustration, let them feel the rupture, but most of all, let them feel the return. Jung gave us the mirror. He said, don't run from the shadow. Let your child know the whole of you so they don't grow up afraid of the whole of themselves. And now it's your turn to be what they'll carry into the quiet moments no one else sees. The gold in your cracks, the memory of your mending, the grace you gave yourself, so they'd know how to give it to themselves one day. If this message found you in the middle of your own mess, share it right now. With the parent who thinks they've already ruined everything. With the one sitting in their car crying and scrolling. With the one who needs this like a lifeline. And then leave a trace in the comments. Write it. I'm still here. Not perfect. Not polished. Still here. Because that's what the good enough really means. You stayed, you cracked, you came back, and that is more than enough.